Hello, friends. The other day, if you caught my live, I painted these cute little daffodils. And for some reason, throughout the whole entire live, I kept referring to them as gladiolas. Therefore, I thought I better paint some gladiolas. I started painting them here and thought, you know what? I want to share this with you guys. So let's go ahead and paint gladiolas today. They are gorgeous. And I also noticed when I was at my mom's overnight the other night, she actually has these growing in her garden and they're beautiful. So I thought it would be fun to paint them. What I'm going to start with first, let me just go through my supplies real quick. If you don't need this, you won't hurt my feelings by just skipping forward. I'm going to be, we'll timestamp it as well. Excuse me. I'm using my Artisto pad. This is 140 pound cold press. Excellent for beginners, you guys. I know a lot of you are really enjoying these. I love them as well. And I have tried every paper to find an affordable paper for my workshops and students. Excuse me. It's got great texture. It's just nice and thick and this beautiful texture. And what's kind of cool, you can always tear this out. It is perforated, but I keep these and I've got them all journaled. I label them for the season. So a great paper, that's what I'm going to be using today. I've got this little swatch here. I'm going to swatch out my colors. I also am going to be using, I just found this wonderful Paul Rubens. This is a 48 set. They've got a lot of really cool colors in here. You can absolutely use your Mylang palette, Paul Rubens Mylang, perfectly fine. It's got a lot of the similar colors, but I wanted to give this a try because I noticed it had some really cool greens and an additional some red. So this is the Mylang set. And look at all the additional greens they've got in here. They've still got a lot of the browns. They've got a few more, I think, oranges and reds. So I just thought this was really funny. A ton of blues. So, and you know, we love our blues in Mylang. That turkey blue and Prussian blue is so pretty. So I'm going to be using this palette today. And I will link this down below if you like. Go ahead and give your paints a little spritz here. And I'll make a kit out of this too. The kits are only $2.50. They go with the tutorial. I'll give you the swatch and the colors, a drawing, and then a guide sheet to kind of guide you through, you know, to follow along with the tutorial. And then I've got my wash and my rinse. This is that Meeden. I love it. So that's what I'm using. Really important, beginners, to wash and rinse your brushes because you don't want to carry that color over into all of the next colors that you're using. I've got an 8 round here. This one's mine. It's sold out, but I will link below for you the 8 Princeton Velvet Touch, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous brush as well. It's got that really nice, soft feel. I was trying to find mine right here for you to show. I think it's packed still, but it's got that beautiful handle that Velvet Touch is really known for. And it's a short handle, so it's an excellent brush as well. Okay, let's swatch out our colors here. So I'm going to go ahead and use, you guys told me about this, our handy dandy little swatch. And if you do that $2.50 kit, you'll get all this in there and it's a digital download. Okay, so let's swatch out our pink. I'm gonna do pink gladiolas because that's kind of my favorite thing. In case you didn't know, you probably did. So this is going to be that rose red pink. I'm gonna pick that up in my palette, put some in here. Just getting that ready. Ooh, look at that gorgeous colors. We're going to be using all different values of this, so you can put plenty of this in your palette. We'll start out with a very light wash, and we're going to be building some layers. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. We're also going to be playing with wet and wet. So let's just swatch that out. This is that rose red. Let me get a little bit more pigment here so you can kind of, ooh, isn't that so pretty? I mean, Easter to me is this pink, this green that we're going to use, and some yellow, so beautiful. Okay, wash, rinse my brush. Let me take that off so it's not a distraction. And then let's go into our cad yellow. So I'll just pick up some of that cad yellow in here, get that in my palette, add some water. There we go. And swatch that out. That beautiful cad yellow. Look how pretty that is with our pink. So pretty. I mean, these colors, these like remind me of jelly beans and springtime and Easter. And then I'm going to use my sap green. Of course, use any green you like. The tree green in my laying would be gorgeous. So I've got some of that. I'll even add in a little bit of that tree green just to brighten it up a bit. There we go. So we've got that going, a little bit more water. And I think that's going to predominantly be the colors we use. So let's swatch this one out. And I'm using that Meeden palette too. I love it because it's big enough, but I can still hold it in my hand, which I really, really like. I've got a smaller one too. That's good for when I go to cafes and such. So those are predominantly the colors I'm going to use. What I will do for a shadowy green color is I'll mix a little bit of our pink like this. And you have to be a little careful with this because that pink can definitely overtake. And then I'm going to add some green to that. So we're working with kind of a limited palette here. And get this smoky, beautiful, dark green olivey color. But what's wonderful about it is it has those undertones of that pink in it. So it's not just a flat green color. It's got this beautiful undertone of pink, which can be really pretty and create this cohesiveness and this harmony in your painting. Brings it all together. So let me just label those for you. So this is, let me see, this is the rose red. This is your cad yellow. This is sap green, and then I threw in a tiny bit of the yellow green in there, just to brighten it up. And then we've got this mix of rose red plus our green. And it gives us this kind of olivey green, but with those undertones of the green and red. I'm also going to put here just plain sap green, just in case we want even one more green in here. And we'll be working a lot with some wet and wet glazes for this. So those are my colors. There we go. And you may have your favorite colors you want to go to. So those are what I'm going to be using. I'm going to lightly sketch this out. Let me grab my Artisto pad here. And make sure you've got those all ready to go in here. All right, so I'm going to kind of, like I said, I'm going to kind of sketch this out, and I'm going to use, let's see, where did this as somewhat of a reference, because I actually really like that. So I might move back and forth here so I can see that. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'll even take that out. This is the beauty of this, these perforations, is you can take these out. This was when I did plein air, by the way, outside sitting in my garden, in case you missed that one. That was a fun one. I think it was just a short. All right, so let me take this out. I can also cut it out, which I do a lot of times, because I don't want it to rip. If I spend a little more time bending it back and forth, it's perfectly fine, but Let me just cut it out for you guys so you can see that. There you go. And we'll use that as a reference for this gladiola that I'm going to do here. So what I'll do first is I want to work in threes, odd numbers. So I'm going to put one here, maybe one here, and then another one down here. One thing I notice with these beautiful gladiolas, whenever I paint a flower, I just want to get the kind of recognizable characteristic of a flower. So for me, it is they grow long on the stalk. And then the other thing I'm going to do is gladiolas have these 6 petals. So I'll use my guidelines, just like that. Those are the 3, and then we'll come out with the other 3 just kind of in between. So you can draw those lines in there too. Okay, and then they've got these beautiful long stalks. So I'm going to kind of draw those in. And then on this one, I have some of that green, like a little bud here. So I'll draw that there, just kind of as a reference. And the rest we're going to do freehand. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I will probably have a leaf coming out over here, something like that. Maybe another one over here. All right. So let me grab my 8 brush. What did I do with that? Here we go. And I'm just going to wet it. And then again, I'm going into my light value. So I want to pull a little bit of that out. And I can see on here, it's a light value. If you need to practice that, just take a practice sheet and see what color value you've got. Nice, even wash, no puddles. If I tilt my paper, it's not dripping. So that's how I'm going to start my petals. And I'm going to do the 3 first. So let's get that in there, just a little bit more water. And let's go ahead and start. Like that. So as you can see, I've got a really light wash. And then these coming down here. Point press. I'm just widening up that brush. Let me do that again for you. So point press, and I'm even turning it a bit to the side. And I kind of overlap, and then I use the tip of my brush to kind of round out everything. I will go into the center of that with a more concentrated color of the pink. Just like that. And now we're done. We're going to come back and do the other areas. So rinse my brush. Lighten up that value. Let's do this the same way. So point, open up that brush, and even kind of turn it and drag it to the side. Point press. Another one here, point press. And then use the tip of that brush to kind of round it out. Tap, tap, tap. So I'm picking that up, but then I'm tapping some of that paint off. Point, press, widen that out, and then fill it in. So we're creating these little triangles, almost kind of orchidish. Point, press, widen that belly kind of to the side. And another one right here, point, press, point, press. And our last one here. Oh, and we need to go into the center of that before it dries. And add in that darker pink. Tap, tap, tap. And this one kind of blended in. So I went back in and tapped that in again. Let's get a little darker value. There we go, just like that. Okay, I'm gonna let that kind of dry, and then we'll go in and start creating our other petals here. Let me look at my drawing for a second so I can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. We could add in another flower right here, but I'm gonna work with the 3. All right, so let's give this a quick little shot with my heat gun. It's a little bit cool here. These are so handy, by the way. I'll link it below for you if you like. There we go. Quick, quick, quick. And now we're gonna go in and we're kind of gonna glaze over these with that same light wash. So picking up some of that pink, doing the same thing with these other 3 guidelines we've got. So point, press, and bring them in. Just like that. Isn't that pretty? Point, press, point, press. And look at that transparency. That is what we really just love about watercolors. Point, press. And you know, you can wiggle your brush if you want some of that interesting petal shape that Gladiolas can have. Like that. You don't want to move around too much in here because you will reactivate that bottom layer, but look at how beautiful that is when it glazes over. And then I'll go into the center again with that dark pink. There we go. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? So let me do that again for you because you can wiggle your brush a bit to get kind of that gladiola feel, how they have that ruffly edge. So point, come out, kind of wiggle your brush. Point, wiggle your brush a bit. And just use the tip of your brush to shape it. So point, wiggle, 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 come in, like that. And now we've got our 2 petals, but look how, that's just magical to me, you guys. This one here, point, press, wiggle, wiggle. Oh, I just love that look. That is what I love about watercolors, among other things. Tap into the center with that dark pink. Oh my gosh, you guys, I can't wait for you to try this. Wash my brush a bit. And I'm just playing with what's in here till I get that color. And again, you know, grab your sheet and kind of go on here. So now I'm using more of a medium value. So let me pick some of that up again. Let's go in and create this petal. Point, press, wiggle, 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 up to a point. Point, wiggle, wiggle. Let it go. Let's do a little bit more. Point, press, wiggle, wiggle. There we go. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. You guys are going to get such a kick out of this. Point, press, wiggle, wiggle. Point, press, wiggle, wiggle. And now we go into the center with some of that dark color. Just a little bit more. Oh, these are so pretty, aren't they? Okay, I'm washing. Here's where it's really important. Wash, rinse. So you want to get the majority of your paint off your brush in that wash. Then I'm going to, let me grab my paper towel here. Okay, nice clean. Now we're going to go in and start creating some of those green leaves. I have that green we created right here, which is kind of a tree green and a yellow, or sap green and a yellow green. I'm also going to use a little bit of the darker green with the pink in it. So I'll mix that right here. So let me get some of my green in here. And then let's pick up some of that pink. Not too much, that color can really take over. So now we've got this nice earthy, shadowy green to work with. It's ready to go. There we go. Perfect. Wash, rinse my brush, and I'm going to go starting with that lighter green. So here we go. We're going to start creating these stalks here at the bottom. So point, open your brush a little bit, about a medium length. And then we're going to come out here. Now I'm really opening up the belly of my brush. As you can see, it's widening out. And then I'll just go around my flower here with the tip of my point. And this is where I love a snappy brush, because I can really get in there and get that fine point. Because a snappy brush allows that point to snap back into shape. Now I might just add a tiny bit of that darker green here and there. I could go in with just a dot of that pink and add it in to the leaves. I think it's so pretty when the leaves have this beautiful hint color. Just flicking a bit to blend that in of your flowers, because just tapping in, it brings this harmony to your paper, to your painting. I just rinsed my brush off. We'll bring that down a bit, and there we go. I could add in a little bit more of that shadowy color, just dotting it in. Now I'm going against the clock here, because as soon as this dries too much, if I go in, it's going to create those blooms, which is okay because this is a floral. So I don't think that looks bad, but I want to keep it somewhat a little bit cleaner. And then I might just add in a tiny bit here. There we go. Okay, let's go to our second leaf. So picking up some of that green, tap, tap, tap. And I'm going to keep going up. I also will, actually, let's add in a few here. We've got this leaf here, point, press, opening the belly of my brush, and just using the tip to go around this flower, maybe a bit peeking out here, and then press, open my brush, and bring it to join here. I'm going to leave that one as it is, but let's keep adding in some more of those little leaves, some more of the little, just tapping in a bit there. There we go. I know my mom's had all kinds of beautiful leaves on them. I should have taken a picture. There we go. Because the even without the flowers, they were just beautiful. So I'll leave that like that. Let's go up through the center here. Tap, tap, tap. And I'm going to tap off a little bit more. Don't want those petals. So if you do get too much, like I'm doing here, you just tap off your brush, see all that came out, and pick a little bit up. Soak it up with the brush. And then we've got point, press, Pick up a little bit more paint, point, press, open that belly. Point, press, and come down. And you can see how wide your brushstroke is going to be because you can see it on there. And then let's create some of these beautiful green little pieces that come out of the side that I thought was really recognizable. And before that dries, I'm going to add in a tiny bit of pink to the center of that. Just like that. And then maybe even here, just to the tips, a little bit more of that pink. Oh, isn't that so pretty? We could even add in now some of that dark green, maybe to the tips here. It's actually a dark green, but it has that reddish pinkish in it, which again, really brings together all of this painting. And just leave it like that. Isn't that so pretty? Let's grab a little bit more here and we'll go in. We need to have, let me look at my reference drawing here. So I've got that one coming up there. I too noticed these stalks kind of curved, some of them, you know, they really went all different. And you had these long stalks coming out that I thought was so pretty. Have that one coming out here. And then maybe some more of those. Before that dries, wash, rinse my brush, pick up a tiny bit of pink, and just go into the edges of those. These little flowers were kind of cocooned and held at the tip of these green stalks, which I thought was so pretty. Now I've got a little bit of a bloom there, so I'm just taking a damp brush and just going to help that blend in a little bit. Like that. So it just smoothed it out. And now we'll go in with just a touch of that pink or even that dark green we mixed and tap it in like that. Look at all these beautiful colors. I feel like I want, because this is so heavy on this side with this big thick leaf. So let's create something over here, maybe coming up here. Point, press, and I'll just tuck that behind this flower. And we're going to follow that down. There we go. And maybe this one too has some of those little stalks on it with the red, just barely tapping into that pink. And make this just a little thicker. There we go. So that kind of balanced it out a bit. I think this one will do some more of these little wispies. And some of those stalks coming out. And now we'll add on just tiny bits of the pink. Hers was in full bloom. It just had a ton of these pink flowers starting to come out. I thought that was so pretty. So now we've balanced out. We had this heavier leaf and these two flowers kind of over to the side. And now we just balanced it out by bringing in a few more things over here. So one last thing I really want to do is I'm going to take a darker value of that green, meaning more pigment, not darker in hue or pigment color, but more of it. So it's more saturated. And I just want to go in and create just some darker value leaves here. So see how that already gives it some dimension? Go in here with that darker value, meaning more saturated, not necessarily a darker color. And there we go. That gave it a little bit more punch, a little bit more interest, like that. And some more of these long wispies here. Hers really had a lot of those in the background. We might even make a couple sticking out from here. So maybe we've got one like that. Maybe we've got one coming out over on this side. So it just creates some interest when you tuck them in behind. Maybe we've got one coming out there. Okay, the last thing I want to do is just use the tip of my brush, the very tip of my brush. And I'm just going to create a couple darker value in the center, some little dots. Now you can barely see my pencil lines. If you don't want those, I left them so that you guys could see those. But if you really don't want those, you can always, when you're drawing your pencil lines, you can roll over it with that kneaded eraser and it will clean those right up. Here's my kneaded eraser. So you just roll that over and it would get rid of those. But I'm going to go in light pressure, tip of my brush, and just dot in a bit. So I'm picking up a really dark value, meaning probably 80% pigment, 20% water. And again, use your swatch to go on here first. And yep, that is a dark value. That's the value I want. And just dot around. There we go. One last thing that you could do, I noticed my mom's had these in them, is I'm going to take a tiny brush. This is that Degato set I talk about all the time. You get, for a beginner, these are fantastic. They're all rounds. You get 15, I believe, or I'm sorry, 10 of them, from this small size to a really large size. And I'm going to go in and just create a couple of these little filaments or stamens, because hers did have that. So light pressure, get a darker value. There we go. And a couple more on these. And you could really just leave this like it is here, because I feel like it would be recognizable. And there you go. Maybe some little dots on the end of those. And we're about done. You could also splatter if you'd like to do that. But look at that beautiful transparency. We did glazing, so much fun. And I think we're pretty much done here. Make sure to add some of that pink into your leaves for that beautiful harmony between your painting, like that. All right, everybody, I hope this was fun for you. These flowers are just so beautiful, and I felt like they were calling me to paint them, since I kept calling my daffodils Gladiolas. But I will also create a kit with this drawing, so you can go in there and do this on your own. And I'd love to see some of you over on Patreon. We're having so much fun over there. I'm currently doing a mini series on color theory, which has really been a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And I will see you all soon. You guys make this space so fabulous. You're so supportive to each other. And I wake up every morning and I can't wait to read your comments. It's so much fun, and see how much fun you guys are doing. Remember, no perfection here. paint these in your style. Take my little guidelines and tips and make them yours. And just let the watercolors flow. I will see you all soon. I'll be right here to remind you, you are an artist. And happy painting, everybody. Happy spring.